those huge screens where they can see like every freckle, every hair that's out of place.
I have that over at my table.
Well, if they do put your screen, your face
That's okay. No, but sometimes they have these huge screens and more than one of them, and it's very disconcerting to me that there's this huge image of yourself, and there's no fix my appearance.
The other thing that confuses a lot of people is when you accidentally put a camera in the downstage monitor, and then you can see yourself talking in the reverse. So one of the big rules as a video switcher is I never put camera in the downstage monitor.
Well, you know what's interesting? All of that was much more disconcerting before we moved into a Zoom. But now, for better or worse, although I still use Fix My Appearance, I'm like talking to myself all the time because of Zoom. And, I know that, I think it's Microsoft Teams. It's really sort of creative. You're a little tiny. You see everyone else, but not yourself. I think you can do that on Zoom, but honestly, it's sort of my life now. I mean, there are days that are all Zoom meetings. The only thing good is people are going to keep themselves to an hour. Like the thing about Zoom, you really learn that, there's no chit chat. You have 1 hour.
Well, if you need anything, we're over there. And that's
I'm ready, thank you.
All right, welcome to the afternoon. And I hope everyone's had a chance to enjoy their lunch, or I hope they are enjoying it as we speak. Our keynote lunch lecture with Dr. Karen Wolk Feinstein, who is sponsored by the Ogden Regional Medical Center, is about to begin. By way of introduction, Dr. Karen Wolk Feinstein is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Healthcare Foundation and its three operating arms, the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative, Health Careers Futures, and the Women's Health Activist Movement Global. Combined, they perform a unique mix of grant-making, teaching, coaching, project management to serve as a regional, statewide, national, and global catalyst for healthcare reform. Under her leadership, the Jewish Healthcare Foundation and the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative have become a leading voice for patient safety, healthcare quality, and related workforce issues. When Dr. Feinstein founded PRHI, it was among the nation's first regional multi-stakeholder quality coalitions devoted simultaneously to advancing efficiency, best practices, and safety. Dr. Feinstein is widely regarded as a leader in healthcare quality improvement and patient safety, as she frequently presents at national and international conferences. Dr. Feinstein is host of the podcast series Up Next for Patient Safety, which you can find on any one of your favorite streaming service or podcast services. She has served on the faculties of Boston College and Carnegie Mellon University, taught at the University of Pittsburgh. Dr. Feinstein is a founder of the Network for Regional Health Improvement and the National Patient Safety Board Coalition. She serves on many nonprofit and governmental boards, including the Heller School at Brandeis University Board of Overseers, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Health Research Advisory Committee, the Board of Visitors of the University of Pittsburgh's Graduate School of Public Health, UPMC Presbyterian Shadyside Board of Directors, the UPMC System-Wide Patient Care Committee, and the Highmark Health Quality, Safety, and Value Board. She has incredible credentials and is highly qualified to talk to us today about patient safety. Dr. Feinstein has written the book Moving Beyond Repair, Perfecting Healthcare, and it is available out in the front for purchase and also for a brief period of book signing between 2 and 2:30 after this talk. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Feinstein.
Thank you very much. Can you hear? It's good? Okay, thank you. So United did not want me to get here today, but finally made it, and I did want to be here because I feel very sentimental about being here in Salt Lake, and also because it's so wonderful to have a conference that has a strong patient safety focus. So when we started our initiative about 25 years ago, we came here to Intermountain to Brent James and went through his program. And at that time, he introduced me to a young infectious disease doctor, also an informaticist, David Klassen. And Dave and I have been friends ever since. Dave warned us then about some of the dangers of the electronic health record. Of course, we believed it was going to solve all our problems. And as you know, he was so right. We also do a lot of work in partnership with Comagin and Mark Bennett, located here in Salt Lake. And I get the pleasure of coming to Sundance every summer for a group of us who meet to talk about healthcare reform. So I said to United, I don't care if it's a middle seat by the bathroom, you've got to get me to Salt Lake. So I'm delighted to be here. I do have something else that was coincidental and made me think that fate wanted me to be here. The Ogden Surgical Society and I were conceived at the same time. So we're the same age, we made it through the crazy 60s, and I thought also when they introduced a postprandial speaker instead of your golf outing, this was important and I better find a way to get here. So I wish I had titled my talk, What's New in My Specialty, but let me say that would have been a better title. So what's new in my specialty? I've spent a lot of time focused on patient safety and medical error. So I'm going to talk about 3 new things that I think are new. One being one local national focus for research and development in patient safety, which we do not have. Secondly, how we create an environment for safety, not focus on the individual worker, but make it difficult for errors to occur. And 3, what new technologies offer. So I'm going to give you a quick romp through all of that. And I'm going to begin at the beginning. My background, I'm not a medical doctor. My background was actually labor economics. But I wound up running a health foundation and read a report by a doctor at the School of Public Health at Harvard, Lucian Leap. And I said, this is impossible. 100,000 people, at that point, something his estimate, are dying of preventable medical error. I have to learn more about this, and then maybe as a young new health foundation, we need to do something about it. So in Pittsburgh is the headquarters of Alcoa, and at that point it was the safest corporation in the world because they had what they called the safety CEO, Paul O'Neill, who was just passionate about making Alcoa enormously safe. So I went to him in 1997 and said, will you help me fix healthcare? Can we take what you did at Alcoa and apply it to healthcare? So a lot of what Paul used at Alcoa, called the TPS, Toyota Production System Process, lean quality engineering, was where we began. And I would say for the first few years, we were enormously successful. We got a great deal of money from the federal government, private foundations. I had to take a whole new floor of our building just to accommodate our staff. Someone wrote a book about us called The Pittsburgh Way. It was translated into different languages. And it was a wonderful time. I got to visit, got to travel the globe. And everything we touched, we started with infection, with hospital-acquired infection. We went on to all kinds of things. Waiting times for parents to have their children evaluated for possible autism. Did a lot in pathology because it's an assembly line, and one of the areas we looked at was accuracy in pap smear sampling. Lots of things that were working very well. They were very successful. We had dramatic results, but after a while, we looked around at all the things we got credit for, all the things people had come from Washington to study, everything went back to baseline. We were literally planting turnips in cement. The only thing that we were successful that seemed to stick was central line infection reduction, and I could talk a little bit about that. But back to baseline. No spread, no sustainability, and I got very discouraged and said, we need to kind of reinvent our focus. So I said, what if we worked on keeping people out of hospitals? And during the Obama administration, we got a lot of enormous grants, and in fact, one of them was a partner with CoMagin here in Salt Lake. This was studying a lot of data. Our state has one of the best mandated public reporting systems. We had a lot of data, so we were looking at who are the people that go in and out of hospitals. One, people who have chronic conditions, their care isn't managed in the community. Clinical pharmacy, let me emphasize what David Klassen said. So many people are on the wrong meds, or they aren't on the right meds. One way or another, clinical pharmacy was a huge issue. Patient engagement, we're still not good at that. But the last and the most successful for us was introducing behavioral health into any clinical setting. And I would say the other two were keeping people out of hospitals at the end of life when they didn't want to be there. Big initiative for our foundation, but I won't have time to talk about that. We do a lot at end of life. And the other one was the revolving door from skilled nursing. Also, all of these, we had grants to show that there are ways of reducing hospitalizations when they're not necessary. And this was a very happy time for us, very successful. And one of the most, as I said, one of our partnerships here with CoMagin was bringing behavioral health, particularly to primary care. But it bothered me because we had really walked away from various settings of care and medical error. And I felt that things weren't good. And during the pandemic, as you know, we've had a spike now in medical errors. And I felt like we had to return to something that we had abandoned. And I looked at other industries, started to become interested. Let's look outside healthcare. And coal mining, as you know, probably the most high-risk, hazardous industry in the world. I looked at their curve, their accident and their unnecessary death curve, and I said, okay, this is pretty discouraging. There are actually very few coal mining deaths in the U.S. In any year. And then I looked at some of the same reports David Klassen mentioned. We all know David Bates well. 1 in 4, and this is pre-pandemic, 1 in 4 patients hospitalized at what we used to joke, man's greatest hospital, and now MGB. This is something that I felt we couldn't walk away from. The pandemic, as all of you know, I don't need to tell you, this is your life every day, has really made things a lot more challenging. We have a lot of disaffection now among people in the medical profession, people at the front line. One reason we had so much trouble, our foundation, in bringing lasting change at quality engineering to the front line is it's not Alcoa. It is very hard for people at the front line to follow the basic requirements of quality engineering principles. And one, as you know, is to solve every problem as it comes up to root cause. Just not working. Also, lines of authority, which we didn't understand, but I understand much better now, within a hospital setting are very complicated. So making sure that something gets standardized across units, that it gets sustained when our coach would leave or the champion within a unit would leave, everything, as I said, went back to baseline. So we looked at a number of things that, and particularly one of the things we are most proud of is our ongoing improvement in central line associated bloodstream infections, and even those were going up as a result of the pandemic. We also had another crisis, as I mentioned, the burnout and the intended retirement of quite a few doctors and nurses. I do get to look at the satisfaction surveys at 2 of our large systems. Actually, they're worse than this, at least in terms of what people intend. Who knows whether they will act on it, but it is very discouraging. I'm sure some of you look at the same surveys I do within your own systems. A lot of people, experienced physicians and nurses and others, plan on retiring soon. The other issue we have is this crisis in public trust, where a lot of people seem to be using healthcare services less because they're not trusty. And the one thing I've always been suspicious is a lot of people are not using healthcare less because of something that happened a century ago. Their trust is current. It's not. We look at explanations that I think are not actually built on fact. So I said I'm going back to the drawing board. I'm going to try and understand why we've made so little progress in healthcare, why our curve isn't going where mining is. And one thing we looked at is who's responsible for ongoing research and development and safety. Where's there the National Transportation Safety Board? So if there's a horrendous incident, even the incident that canceled my flight yesterday, someone will be looking into that. It's almost guaranteed. And what is interesting to me is, where do you go in healthcare? Where is a center for everyday ongoing R&D? And what we found, we took one of our young staff persons and we said, can you do like an ecosystem? And the ecosystem in healthcare is very confusing because responsibility for safety is very diffuse. So you're looking at all the different agencies that have a piece of the puzzle, and yet no one of them all day, every day, is focusing on understanding what are the major causes of our major categories of harm and how do we prevent harm before it occurs. So this was a little shocking, well, particularly when you look at other industries. So we're in a pandemic, right? Everyone's on Zoom anyway. We started having sessions. First, we started with sessions that were face-to-face, then we moved to Zoom. A lot of people who've been active in patient safety over the years, I said, it's time for a swerve. What's new in our specialty? Time for a swerve. We have to re-examine what we've done. Hasn't worked. What's a new direction? So one thing everyone agreed on, and this idea has come up over and over. Please, I'm not claiming any originality here. The idea of one national patient safety board, one place in the country at the national level where this kind of research that I talk about and development is going on every day with intense focus. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I can promise you over the years this idea has come up over and over, and for one reason or another it didn't get anywhere. And I'm only looking at aviation for this reason. What do they have in place that we don't? And all of you have seen this, I'm sure, too many times. And yes, we're not aviation, but we could be doing better. So we looked at what are the federal existing entities that make aviation so safe. Well, you all know about the National Transportation Safety Board, but they only focus on egregious incidents. And in healthcare, we can't afford to do that right now, right? We have too many things happening all the time, every minute. So just looking at the sentinel events, I don't think is the right direction for us in healthcare. But also in aviation, you have the Commercial Aviation Safety Team, and ASIAS, the Aviation Safety Information Analysis and Sharing Organization, and they're connected. What's really important is they're gathering information, real information, actual information. And that is because in aviation, all the airlines come together across competitive lines. They want to give accurate information on misses and near misses. It is kept confidential, but ASIAS has updated information that isn't upcoded, downcoded, and played with. I won't go into that, but you all know what I'm talking about. They have real data, and then they have a team that is constantly going through that data, looking for areas where you could anticipate harm and intervene before it happens. So, okay, are there any anesthesiologists here? Okay. I love anesthesiologists. I love your Patient Safety Foundation. So I know what you're all thinking. We did this in 1985. What's wrong with the rest of you? The APSF is the real deal. It's had enormous impact on safety and anesthesia, and we look at them as the model, a model that deserves replication. The other issue I told you, what's new in patient safety, bringing human factors experts in, they look at our systems and they really are shocked. Our work environment isn't wired for safety. It's not so much the individual, so we haven't given them an environment where it's very impossible in many instances to prevent harm and injury. And I know, thank you, anesthesiologists, I worked with your National Society, and we took a close look at the Vanderbilt incident with the nurse Redonda Vaught. Honestly, that incident should have never happened. It's not whom to blame. It's that the incident should have never happened. And we can all talk about defective aspects of the automated medication dispensing machines. Frankly, if you add a third letter of the alphabet, which a number of the systems have done already, you vastly reduce the likelihood of another Redonda Vaught incident happening. But that's beside the point. We have no way of enforcing that every system do that. We have no way of enforcing that every vendor have at least 3 initials, not 2. When the human factors engineers look at our systems, they can't believe how hard it is for us to fix something we know is broken. And in some instances where we know the solution. So their theory is it's not the vehicle, it's the vehicle, not the driver. So let me just give you an example of something that I think is very, very important. This is one coal cart that overturned. It was moving on uneven surfaces and it wasn't stabilized. So what happened? They went in to look at this incident. One worker was killed in one coal mine when one cart turned over. In mining immediately, the national agencies that investigate this came in immediately. They found a way to stabilize carts so this wouldn't happen. Not a single mine in the country was allowed to not stabilize their carts. And I only need to give you lots of examples. One, we had a talk at one of the hospitals. I sat on their the board quality committee. And they talked about all the things that go wrong with rapid response teams. And there are lots of them, and you probably know them better than I do. But one was, for a critical piece of equipment, the electrical cords weren't long enough. So they actually couldn't use it. And another is the defibrillator problem. So when I'm talking to nurses, everybody nods their heads. Our defibrillators aren't standardized. So a nurse can be on a unit, and the defibrillator they're using, not the one they're accustomed to, they cannot get it to work. So there were a number of things they listed. And I said, are these all fixed? Have we standardized our defibrillators throughout our system? I mean, yes, it's 40 hospitals, but you know the answer. No, I mean, and I don't even know if we've improved the electrical cords and all the other things that go wrong. Please understand that in these other industries that are much safer, this is routine to find a solution to a problem and make it so that the workers at the front line, whatever their specialty, are not likely to create an error. So I'm totally in love with hospital command centers. I look at that, I think of technology and what it can offer. So I don't know if any of you, I know you have command centers here in some of your hospitals. I visited one at not a large system in Dayton. It's absolutely extraordinary. There's sensors and monitors throughout their hospitals. And you could say, well, what's so exciting about that? Mostly, we all know they were set up for sort of efficiency in making sure that no bed was left unemptied. Okay, that's okay. That is a financial issue, and I understand, a good issue to focus on. But also they introduced a new level of efficiency, reliability, standardization, using the technology they have to anticipate now trouble spots, but also during the pandemic, an extraordinary rationalization of resources. So what do I mean about that? They could assign COVID-positive patients to certain units where the right physicians, the right supplies and equipment were there, and other systems that didn't have command centers nearby were all using their command center, which was next to the center that was set up to deal with COVID. They were next to each other, and they also have in their command center all the first responders. They are part of the command center. So it was this extraordinary use of technology to respond to a crisis, but also I look at the potential and there is a unit, a GE unit in Toronto, extraordinary, to use all of the data they have access to the EHR, and all the technology, all the sensors and monitors to be able to anticipate harm. And I asked the nurses, by the way, in the command center, I said, do you know who's naughty and nice? I mean, you're sitting at these screens all day. You know that some units get the bed turned around right away, and others are having a lot of trouble, just kind of getting their act together. They said, oh, we're the least popular people in our system. We know who's naughty and nice. So I asked the head of the system, I said, what do you do when you have a unit or a shift of a unit that doesn't seem to be functioning well? And he said, oh, I go out immediately and I say to them, how do I help you meet your performance goals? Okay, so I love that. So the decision of the people involved in our swerve sessions was that it was time for a National Patient Safety Board to do all the things that I mentioned. And we wanted to complement what already exists. So we were not setting up something in every way we could think of that was redundant with what we already have, data we already have that are reliable, the regulations, people who do regulate, we're not going to regulate, we're not there to collect data we already have. We were much more likely, like CAST in aviation and ASIAS, to have a place for protected data. And I know there's always going to be some pushback on that, but if we were combining public reporting with the best, most accurate data possible, not upcoded, downcoded, recoded, whatever we do with data now, you can't make the kind of progress that you make in other industries. So anyway, we have worked hard, we have legislation. I will say this, we have an extraordinary coalition. Utah is here. Remember in the upper right hand, well, we have Comagin and your university. We have this amazing collection of stakeholders, both healthcare providers, patient advocacy groups, civic organizations. So we've been very lucky. Lots of people have said it is time for a National Patient Safety Board. Of course, then you have to get it through the legislature. And then to our delight, President Biden had his Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology form a special work group. They met this year, they came up with recommendations, and number one was to establish a national patient safety team. So we were very excited, keep waiting for more action. There's a lot that could be done through the president and through his office, but we weren't just waiting for that. So where would the safety team is recommended differ from a safety board, which our coalition has introduced legislation for, basically in two ways. One, investigations of sentinel events. We look much more at looking overall at the major categories of harm rather than just focusing on sentinel events. And then the second is an issue that I know will always be a touchy one. How transparent do we have to be about trouble spots and the data we collect? And the decision of the coalition is we would lose a lot of valuable data if we started out making it transparent. We did introduce bipartisan legislation in March, which is very exciting. In the House, we have 2 people to introduce legislation in the Senate, so we are moving forward. And our coalition we have revised and edited the legislation many times. Our goal was to make it as inoffensive as possible, as acceptable to as many different stakeholders as possible. It's been interesting, and I like to think there's more momentum on patient safety around the world, but we do have an international group now, which we never had. Recently, we presented to this group. There were 700 people from around the world on Zoom at the same time. So I like to think there's momentum that we can build on. It was also mentioned we do a podcast series, The Happiest Thing I Do. I love that. I get to interview luminaries in the various aspects of patient safety. This is available if it interests you. But we wanted to take advantage of a pandemic when so many people were at home or available and try to capture as much information as we could on the issue of safety from many perspectives. So anyway, we'd love to have any of you who haven't joined the National Patient Safety Board add your name to the coalition. So let me take another round, back to other things that excite me. So I'm very excited about the possibility of technology in healthcare, as in every high-risk industry, to make that safer environment, to make it easier for everybody involved in healthcare to practice as safely as possible. So I got this idea, I read a book called Startup Communities, and I said, oh my God, there's so many competitions out there. There are hackathons, there are business school competitions, there are startup competitions. What if we, the foundation, gave an award? And they go way beyond health professions. These involve business schools, engineering schools, computer science schools, robotics, everything. What if we gave an award for the best idea in patient safety? And then I said, would anyone do this? I mean, would any of these competitions offer a special award? And could we get one of our national experts in safety to actually judge? So we found some partners, you know, the usual suspects, Leapfrog, IHI, others around the country, the National Quality Forum. And we said to them, do you think this idea has any legs? We're happy to pay for the award, but what if none of the competitions want to offer one? We picked, these are CMS categories, right? So we picked 5 problem categories, 4 you're all familiar with, and there's no way our friends interested in diagnostic error were going to leave that one out. So we said, just come up with a technology solution to one of these categories, and you're eligible for our award. And we also identified innovation hubs. We wanted places where there was a lot of innovation going on, not only medical care that was good, but also interest in innovation. And of course, Salt Lake was there. And we said, we're going to target those innovation hubs, but let's see if anyone wants to offer this competition. So as you can see, we were everywhere. The first 2 takers were South by Southwest and MIT. And we said, okay, I think we're onto something. We just did one, actually, at the University of Utah. We're doing them everywhere. And then people who've done one want to do another. Why do I mention this? Because there are a lot of young people from other disciplines. And can I say that in other industries, safety is an interdisciplinary experience? And those of you know at the APSF, it's been interdisciplinary since its founding. So what we loved is in all of these different settings in our innovation hubs and beyond, young people are very excited about this. We also have a lot of diversity, and I'm not going to go into this in any depth, but accelerators, incubators, pitch competitions, I mean, hackathons. There's so many places we could plant a seed and get people excited. We're excited about this, just signed a contract. At the Consumer Electronics Show in January, we're going to have a competition right there at CES. The winners of our different competitions are going to compete. You know, we're going to select some finalists, and they're going to compete on a stage at the Consumer Electronics Show and also get a booth to talk about their invention. So I think this is great for young people. Mike Eisenberg talked to you. His father, John Eisenberg, who's one of the founders of AHRQ, and a doctor absolutely committed to patient safety, is one of the reasons our initiative even exists. And we commissioned him to do a documentary. You heard, and some of you saw, To Err is Human. But the pitch is absolutely terrific. After we found all these young people who were so excited about innovations in healthcare, creating that safer space, we said, well, why don't we do a documentary? So Mike Eisenberg not only tracks this one superstar, and he is an alum of my university. I had nothing to do with any of this except help pay for it. But he's a graduate from Brown. He was admitted to medical school like when he was 17. He didn't go to medical school. He invented an app. It's a wonderful story. It's now valued at $18 million. He's like 24. But there's a lot of energy and excitement in this space. So what we also love is in the documentary, centers of excellence all over the country are featured in many different specialties, including surgery. I believe it's the University of Nebraska. I loved it. The surgical teams put on virtual reality glasses and goggles, and the team gets together and they practice surgery, particularly when they think it's complicated or not sort of their standard surgery. They practice it together with virtual reality. Anyway, you'll see lots of things there that I think are exciting and offer potential. We did, it was premiered 2 weeks ago at the Cleveland International Film Festival, and we were a little nervous. We had many doctors and nurses in the audience, and how are they going to react? You know, are they going to push back against the idea that technology has a lot to offer? We shouldn't be afraid of it. Young people love it. They want to get engaged. It was wonderful. They did a stand-up ovation, so this will be released more widely. You have to see it. And really, I think one of the most heartwarming things is the reaction we got from the clinicians in the audience. So then I said to myself, what are you missing? Pittsburgh, my hometown, is a center of safety research, discovery, and innovation. Any book on industrial safety will begin with Wabtec, Westinghouse air brake technology. Wabtec put air brakes in trains, but they also put the automatic coupling in trains. You say, big deal. 16,000 people a year would die being crushed when the different components of the train would couple. And so in any event, this is kind of where safety and technology entered industrial safety. I said, this is my hometown. Mine safety began here with MSA, energy safety. We also at our Carnegie Mellon University, used to be CIT, Carnegie Mellon University, we put people in outer space. We put little automatic things on Mars and the moon. And I'm thinking, if we can do that, what can we learn in patient safety? So with all the different leaders in safety, I said, how do we learn from all of them? And will this take me a lifetime? So we worked with our technology council in Pittsburgh, and we put on an all-day summit. It was like a Senate hearing. We had one industry after another, and people from the different sectors within the industry. So when you do energy, you do mining, you do oil, you do natural gas. With people from all the different industries, and a whole section on labor, and a section on healthcare. And they all talked about what was absolutely essential to making their industry safer and to putting the curve in a different trajectory than healthcare. So the one thing everybody said, and the most important thing, and this was across all of this is a whole day of hearings, was that the top leadership is absolutely committed. It goes all through an organization, whether there's a true commitment to safety or not. And this is not only the CEO of a health system. This is the unit supervisor, this is the department chair, that there are many ways that signals are sent out. And one is that they absolutely welcome people coming forward and saying, we have a safety problem, or I had a near miss, or we have an issue here. That has to be welcomed. The other is how much the lengths they go through to engage everybody in safety. Everybody. And you'll hear lots of stories. Some of the stories were great. A mirror that walks in, as you walk into work in one of the big companies, there's a mirror, and it says underneath it, who's responsible for safety. But really engaging everyone, making it rewarding people who come forward in so many ways. They also connected, and they did this without shame. They said, you understand safety is connected to productivity, that our workers aren't going to feel committed to us. They're not going to feel that this is a place where they work. They're not going to trust their leadership if we don't commit forcefully in every way we can to safety. I thought that was interesting. They weren't apologetic about it, that it's a way to run a good company. The other thing that was kind of interesting that we heard from a number of people is the ongoing importance of voicing this commitment. The other thing which David covered very well, David Klassen, data, data, data. Every one of them collect enormous amounts of data. Now we can process it with our big data analytics. They collect enormous amounts of accurate, timely data, and they all say, well, we can't be safe. And they collect it across competitors, across competitive sites. Everyone is in agreement, not just aviation, that this is so central to their industry. And I would say I think we still have work to do. The other, and that's why we have a proposal for a National Patient Safety Board, ongoing research and experimentation in safety that is absolutely interdisciplinary and ongoing. And they'll have organizations within their industry that do this. That's sort of a given. The other thing that was interesting that we heard from labor, the labor panel was very interesting, let me just say, because all of the big unions in Pittsburgh have these huge, gorgeous training centers. Every politician, local, statewide, national, they all come to our training centers for our unions. But what do they do in the training centers? They do a lot of training around safety. So it's kind of there's a strong frontline commitment. And one of the stories we really loved is how they confronted, the workers confronted one of the manufacturers, happened to be a German manufacturer, and said, your equipment is not safe. So the German company sent a whole team over, they met with the workers, they changed their equipment, and I'd like to see more of this going on, that people felt more empowered wherever you are within an organization to say something isn't safe. Let's address it. Let's be open about it. And I can't say enough about interdisciplinary, more interdisciplinary. There's so much that we learn from other industries. This was interesting. One of the speakers said, one thing about researchers, they always want to do something novel. And, we all know that sometimes the best way to get an article published or whatever is to do something novel, make a new discovery. But she made a plea for, within industries, ongoing evaluation, maybe not as sexy, not as exciting, but there has to be a reward, not only for looking forward, but doing it as David Bates et al. Study did, looking backward at their institution. How safe are we at man's greatest hospital? How safe are we? So I think that her plea was well accepted. So the one thing, and I won't have time to go, all of the industries make use of technology. Sensors and monitors are everywhere. And these sensors and monitors do all kinds of sophisticated things. So I was in Australia, and they talked about, we have a big problem in our systems. I'm guessing you do, wherever you come from. A lot of our nurses particularly, but others, don't feel safe. We have a lot of violence now, a lot of really angry people. Anyway, what we saw in Australia was sensors and monitors, particularly in waiting rooms and at unit supervisor desks, whatever, that pick up by facial recognition people who are getting very hostile, very angry, very agitated. And then they also have a training session that they do immediately for staff, wherever it is. How do you deal with the agitated patient? It was very interesting, and I now know that's coming to the US, and people are doing that here. Exoskeletons, I can't talk enough about that. Industry talks about this all the time. We don't in healthcare, but I have a sister who lives with MS. She's falling all the time. She's trying to navigate the world. I say to someone, can't you find her something that stabilizes her left side? Why are other industries so excited about exoskeletons and we don't yet talk about them much? I think they could be extraordinary, getting people out of wheelchairs, getting people mobile who are now, fairly disabled and homebound. Anyway, that's my personal thing. There's so many things happening, reminders that are automatic in other industries that say your hat isn't on or you forgot to put your safety belt on. A lot of reminders that come up at the right time with the right reminder. A lot of decision report, we're getting there. Robots and drones, I will say, they're coming to healthcare. biomarker detection, and then so many uses of virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you see the pitch, I hope you will, the documentary, you'll see all the interesting ways. But one of them, which was interesting to me, it's a hand surgeon. And correct me if I'm totally wrong, but a lot of hand surgery doesn't involve nerves or things that would cause pain, but people want to be anesthetized. So he does virtual reality surgery without anesthesia. It's actually very interesting, and his patients love it. You know, instead of a day in the hospital, whatever, they go home, they drive themselves home. It was very interesting. Anyway, you'll see lots of uses for virtual reality, and I think that is sort of happening now. So the one thing, too, that they mentioned a lot is that there isn't the lag time we have. Now, I don't think I need to tell you, 17 years? The lag time in other industries from a solution that has been tested and evaluated and is credible, the lag time is very short. Just think of that mining cart that turned over. Our lag time in healthcare from something that is verifiably better, that will absolutely is proven without a lot of unintended consequences to make healthcare safer, it takes forever, if it ever does, get standardized, spread, and sustained. You have no idea how far behind we are. And all of the other industries don't believe it either. They actually, it was sort of eye-opening for them, because our luncheon speaker, who came from teletracking, but he's an engineer, talked about how hard it is to market safety equipment in healthcare, and why there is so little commercial development in healthcare, because it doesn't get adopted. And we've lots of interesting stories about that. And industries during the pandemic, our mining safety industries produce respirators. I mean, it's one of the things they do. So during the pandemic, for local hospitals, they created a lot of respirators to take the burden off. But as soon as the pandemic was over, it was like, go away. We have our vaccinations now. You can stop making respirators for us. So, we not only do we not have a market, it's actually a serious problem. And the interesting thing is, we'll talk a little bit about DARPA, but DARPA was saying how much they like their discoveries to be commercialized, because then they get spread and used. Okay, this may shock you, because I know when we started working on the NPSB, the one thing I heard wherever we went in healthcare is no regulations, no more regulations. Please don't regulate safety. No other industry thinks that way. The other industries say, we like regulation. Not only does it standardize and set a bar, but we don't want competitors in our industry who aren't following best practice when we are. And I know my husband was in waste management for a while, and they would say to him, well, you must hate the EPA. No, we love the EPA, because the people who are dumping trash in streams and lakes and backyards and wherever they were dumping it, they can't do that anymore. We all have to follow landfill standards, and it's good for us, because if we're complying, others should too. And I know in healthcare you say the word regulation, everybody falls apart, but that is not what we heard from all the other industries. They actually like regulation. They like standards. This is over and over again in all the other industries. I would say not only have we not engaged our patients sufficiently, and you heard David talk about, David Klassen, his experiment at our WJ Hospital in New Jersey, getting the patients and their families engaged. But the one thing that other industries do is engage the front line. And I told you these training facilities are magnificent, state-of-the-art. They're sleek, they're terrific. And it's also interesting that there's a great career in other industries in safety. So surrounding Pittsburgh, it was also interesting, we didn't realize, are so many safety science, safety management programs, both undergraduate and graduate. We went out and started visiting some of them. Why didn't I do this earlier? Their graduates are employed very quickly in other industries. Their graduates all get good salaries, good jobs, and they never graduate anyone who doesn't get employed. I wish we had this same industry of safety training as part, and it can't be just in your graduate school education, which I worry about. You know, it has to be ongoing. And the one thing you'll find with all these union shops where they do all this training, it's ongoing. I mean, nobody says, well, I was trained in that, so I don't need to be updated. But safety training was so widespread. Commercialization, I mentioned this. It really is very important. I know we don't take this seriously. We say, why do I care? Why do I want more people commercializing safety? Because you do, because the R&D then isn't on the budget of your health system, or even the taxpayer. If there was a market for safety products in healthcare, meaning that we prioritized it. I was at a meeting of one of our largest health systems, and the board was meeting, and it was very exciting. They put up their 8 priorities for the year. Safety wasn't there. And I said, safety isn't here. And they said, nobody answered. Usually if I post anything on chat, I get an answer like instantly. And where's safety? But if it's not prioritized, there won't be a market. A lot of the R&D that needs to go on in the private sector is not going to happen. And these things are all related. So I can't begin to say, as they said at the hearings, how important making it clear that safety is a priority by what you do, what you buy, and your actions. I mentioned this a lot, and I'm not going to keep going on that one. So here's what's interesting. Where do I find at least the beginnings of the same prioritization, the same passion for breaking new ground on safety and keeping people as safe as possible? Believe it or not, the military. It was very interesting. We had a strong representation. We had a terrific panel. DARPA and DOD were there. And their passion for injured warriors is extraordinary. Their commitment to technology, extraordinary. And the other thing is, a lot of the things they're developing are terrific. And so we said the obvious thing to the leaders from DARPA: how long will it take for them to come to civilians? Like, I love the vest you can put on that will do what a rapid response team does. The Applied Physics Lab at MIT has something called Madeira, the Mechanical Device Interoperable Rescue Assistant, I think. Anyway, Madeira is a pod. Madeira goes onto the battlefield and will sustain a wounded soldier for up to 3 days. It does diagnostics and intervention. This is a pod. So I sort of made a joke there, because I just heard this talk on what goes wrong with our rapid response teams, and I said, as a joke, can Madeira fit in an elevator? And the people were saying, well, why? And I said, well, maybe if I go south, maybe I want Madeira to come. And so they said, well, you know, someone wants to talk to you, a leader in our system. And I said, okay, well, it's coming up to the holidays. Could they call in January? They said, he wants to talk to you tomorrow. So I said, okay. So I told him about what I learned about rapid response teams, and that I thought Madeira might be very helpful. For every Madeira, for every tracer, that's the vest you can put on, there are all kinds of things happening in the military, very much related to safety, and also particularly making sure that we do the very best we possibly can for everyone who's injured. And it does excite me in this sense, because there's dollars for innovation and research, but also I worry, how long will it take for some of these things to get to the rest of us civilians? So I won't go into it. The panel was terrific. They had all kinds of things they were working on that were state of the art. Everybody was very impressed. I was worried that the other industries, they were, at the end of the day, were worried and thinking, why was I worried about healthcare when DARPA and the military are doing so much? So I didn't know how to explain to them. It may be a long time before Madeira ever gets in the elevator when I'm in the hospital. So thank you so much. I love questions. I love to have a dialogue. I'm sure many of you have them. And also, you're welcome to go on our websites if you're interested in any of these other things. So what do I want to leave you with? I would say the basics. Please ask, in whatever system, whatever setting of healthcare you are, in what way do you show everyone the commitment at the very top to safety? How does it get spread throughout whatever unit or primary care office or nursing facility, anywhere you are, how does it spread? Data. Are we really collecting honest data as an industry? Are we collecting and sharing data? Are we picking up near misses? Do workers get rewarded? And I'm going to tell you right now, they don't. And you know why I'm going to tell you they don't? Because I can't tell you how many nurses have come to me because I knew them. And they said, I saw a terrible problem, and I reported it. One was a monitor. She was working. This is a woman who didn't need to work ever. Her husband very wealthy. And she wanted to go to nursing school. She wanted to do something useful. So she's in an obstetric hospital. And there are monitors now in the ICU. The person who was supposed to be monitoring, we don't know, went to the bathroom, went to get lunch, I don't know. A patient fell out of bed and died, a young mother. And this troubled this nurse so much. And she came to me and she said, I said, well, did you report it? She said, of course, the nurses on my unit won't talk to me. And the unit supervisor basically told me to shut up. I have to tell you, this isn't how you're going to create safe systems. And we really have to collect that data and reward people for reporting a problem. We don't do that yet. Research and development, honestly, it's so scattered, it's so random, and there's no one national federal agency who does this all the time. Technology, we're not deploying it as well as we could. I love the command centers I've seen, but so far I've only seen one really focused on what they could do for safety in particular, but there's so much opportunity there. There's so much opportunity in technology, and there's so many young people who want to get involved in making our industry safer. If any of you go to the Consumer Electronics Show, okay, I'm a junkie, you're going to see them all on stage. Education and engagement, ongoing. We need that. And the other is commercialization. Secondly, I really do want to see a National Patient Safety Board enacted, but our politicians don't hear a lot from people who are either in the profession or patients about safety. And I do think that one of the most exciting things for us, it really would be exciting, is how we make our environments safer, not individuals, how we make it harder and harder for Radon Devat to almost go to jail for lots of reasons. So that's what I leave you with, and I love questions. Yes.
My question is, having been a physician for over 35 years, I've seen a decline in what I consider patient care safety. And my concern is it's getting worse because of the shortage of nurses. You've got one nurse and 10 techs, where in the old days you used to have a nurse, 10 nurses. I'm wondering why we're so resistant to change is because everybody's spread so thin and so frazzled and can barely get by, let alone add another regulation or another thing they have to do. So how do we fix that problem where there's such a shortage of care, period?
People are asking this question. It's one of the hardest ones for me to answer. On our staff, we have 50-some employees, and we always wanted nurses because we do CES qualified training. And I thought if we had nurses, we have to have nurses, by the way, to qualify in some of these programs. And it was hard to hire a nurse. Now I'm turning away nurses. We have so many nurses. They'll come, they say, we'll do anything. And I say, well, I'd rather have you on the front line when I'm sick. And they say, we're leaving. We'll come to you or go somewhere else. So I've been looking at the satisfaction surveys. We have a huge problem. I don't think you can run away from it. And please, if you have access to them, look at your system's satisfaction surveys. Also, I see a trend. I know there's a financial squeeze. I know everyone's concerned about it. But I think encouraging retirement among your more senior clinicians is a really bad idea. It is happening, and they're not going away happy. I mean, because I hear from the ones who are going away really mad. They were pushed into retirement. I know an anesthesiologist, he was given a double shift. And he's in his early 60s. He wanted to continue. He said, I'm not continuing. I can't do my job with a double shift. I know that there's a financial crunch, but there are also a lot of excesses. And I got to tell you, my own system, we don't need 3 Super Bowl ads when we've just laid off 1,000 workers. Now, I'm just a patient, I'm an employer, and a board member. And I raise how can you lay off 1,000 workers and have 3 Super Bowl ads? And if you think any of us, first of all, we don't choose our health care. My employees don't choose it, I choose it. I pick the system. They have to go what I choose. Why are you advertising? Maybe Medicare, okay, you're advertising for Medicare. There must be a better way to reach the Medicare population. And then the other issue is, do any of us believe those canned ads? I mean, I don't know, maybe you do, but I mean, I see that ad on the Super Bowl, it's cute, it's funky. I'm not choosing my healthcare system because of your ad, but there are a lot of excesses. I'm picking the Super Bowl ads because it drives me crazy. But I do think that we might be, and I wish boards governed with an enormous amount of energy, we do need to say, not okay. You cannot have 3 Super Bowl ads and then lay off 1,000 workers. Yes? I wish I had an answer. Honestly, I do. I think about this day and night.
Thank you for touching on that, because I feel like physicians, unless you have a private practice, there's only so much influence you can do, you know, in regards to safety as being a leader, because most of the leadership is administration, and administration forcing, like, you're going to work for this cost. So, I mean, the culture is set up by administration, and with burnout and payment and incentives, it's malaligned. And like when we're talking about nurses, like nurses don't want to work in that situation. So I guess my question is, how do you see convincing administrators to actually value safety, to value like paying people appropriately so they want to stay and make the situation safer?
If I had an answer for you, it wouldn't be 25 years later that I can see so little progress. It's a tough one. And a lot of these people are my friends. You know, I mean, I'm maybe part of the system. They're my friends, but I can't begin to tell people how important this is. You know the nurses. We have 2 now obstetrical nurses on our staff. And my son-in-law is an obstetrician. They were in his unit, and I wanted them to stay. And they said, it's not safe. I can't sleep at night. This is tragic to me. Safety is a big issue, particularly among nursing, for why they're leaving. And I wish I knew. Honestly, I speak about it, but it also discourages me when I see a system put up, you know, these are our priorities for the year, and safety's not there, and your nurses are leaving because they feel they can't deliver safe care.
Or they're trying to make budget cuts by putting more patients to nurses, but giving themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars in bonuses.
It is discouraging. And I'll tell you the other thing that is sad to me. I went to the nursing school graduation during the pandemic. It was the first one they had after vaccination. And this is at the University of Pittsburgh. And all these beautiful young people in whites, they all came, and they came flooding into this auditorium. They chose nursing during a pandemic. And I literally had tears in my eyes. And I said to the dean later, this was the most beautiful experience. All these young people chose nursing. And she looked at me and she said, if we're lucky, 1/3 of them will practice. It just breaks my heart. I mean, they're choosing nursing. What are we doing to turn them off? How do we keep them? I wish I had an answer. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I spoke myself a couple of days ago from the same podium. I want everyone to remember what's being talked about here. Why are we not making progress on something that should be so obvious about what is the purpose of healthcare? Is it to make money, or is it to take care of patients? That is the basic bottom line problem, and it's the reason we're not making headway on this and many other issues. If you want to do something about it, come and join us at Common Sense Healthcare. We will make patient care the reason we have a healthcare system. We'll change it, but we need everybody in this room to join us and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I also will say, you have such a foundation here in Utah. I'm not saying it to be polite because you can tell I'm not ingratiating. You have so many luminaries here. The patient AI and patient safety conferences, they started here. Sundance takes place here. You know, Brent James has been doing this for a long time. Comagin is here, maybe the largest QIO in the country. I joke, but Mark covers most of the US. You have so much to build on. Please light the way for all of us.
So Tuesday night, our first speaker was Mike Eisenberg, and he talked about, we watched the documentary, To Err is Human. He did talk about a national organization of research and development for patient safety. And I don't know if that was the ARC, the Agency for Health Research and Quality. I don't know if that was the agency he was talking about, but he was talking about a national agency for patient health care, and I'm not sure, again, now what he was referring to, but do you know, and can you elaborate on that? And
Sure. His father was one of the founders, John Eisenberg, a physician who sadly died of brain cancer, just as kind of this whole patient safety movement was started. And AHRQ, it's sort of long and complicated. First of all, they fund studies, you know, kind of one study at a time, everything to do with quality and safety. And it's certainly an important part of the puzzle. It's not enough. It's not anything like the commercial aviation safety team, not focused on technology, and not interdisciplinary. I don't want in any way, we're so happy to have anyone doing anything in safety, and I very much value ARC, and I sign all the petitions. ARC is always under attack, many of you know, by Congress. And also, David talked about PSOs, and he's part of one that is very successful. We have a lot of PSOs funded by ARC, and it's hard to show any impact on safety, just being direct. We have some that are really good, like Pascal Metrics. We have others, I don't know really what they're doing. So ARC is under a lot of attack. There was a recent study by NAM, the National Academies. It is NAM. Well, it's medicine and lots of others. Anyway, it used to be IOM. So the study was done. Paul Tang, who's now at San Diego, was at Stanford. I think he's at both. It didn't mince words, okay? The study is out there, and it was highly critical. So the issue is, can you make ARC stronger? Can you give it more authority? Or is it gonna kind of be stuck? But anyway, without going into detail, that study is out there. The National Academy of Medicine, Paul Tang. So it's definitely worth reading, and it will answer your question. Yes, it exists. And yes, we'd like to keep it. We wish it were stronger. But it's also limited, has a very limited focus.
Thank you. As a retired anesthesiologist, I wanted to thank you for your comment about how much you love anesthesiologists. So thank you. But also, one of the reasons anesthesia has become much more safe in my lifetime is the invention of technology, pulse oximetry, end-tidal CO2, as well as the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation, which helped us identify where we were making mistakes. And it is much more safe. But I just wanted to make a comment on the resistance to regulation. I think why a lot of healthcare workers resist regulation is they see it as something that is going to make their lives more difficult, consume more time, and a lot of regulations they feel don't make sense. I'm reminded of when the ICD-9 codes changed and they became much more complicated. My favorite one was injured by falling safe debris, second occurrence. So if you can make them simpler and something that really works and they can see the benefit of it, like pulse oximetry, end-tidal CO2, you'll have very rapid adoption because we all want to keep our patients safe.
Thank you so much. And it is true. I love anesthesia, but I also say something interesting. So the APSF is, you know, interdisciplinary from day one, 1985. So I like to travel on study tours. So last year I was in New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Norway, and Finland. And wherever we go, I try to find leaders in patient safety. We can meet with leaders in patient safety. I want to tell you, in every one of those countries, the specialist that came forward was from anesthesiology. Not only anesthesiology, but almost always anesthesiology. So the one thing that anesthesia does to me is it says, look, I would like to have a National Patient Safety Board, trust me. But each of you in your specialties, you could be doing some of this too. Believe me, I'm going for broke. I'm going nationally. But also, there could be more APSFs. And I do feel the impact. It doesn't matter what country I'm in. And if you go to Norway, which is amazing, the anesthesiologists have really got the whole country all excited, the whole country, about safety. They're doing lots of things, lots of policy, lots of research centers. But I don't discount the idea that within your specialty, there could be a lot of work going on as well.
Hi, thank you also for your insight on this. I just had an observation. Do you know, as I've gotten older and I've been able to slow down some, I've sort of been less of an ostrich and taken more time to look at the world around me and think a little bit and read a lot. And one of my observations has been that you have different camps. You've got, you know, one interest on a hill here with their flag, another on another, another on another. And in the center, you've got a dollar or whatever economic system we're utilizing at that time, or in whatever country. But, and everyone's sort of either struggling over a section, a portion of that pie, so to speak, or those fundings, or they're busy fighting with each other. And it's my impression that if we were to approach this more like, say, and I'm just going to use an example as an analogy, or I'm going to use astronomy as an analogy. Much of what I've read, a lot of the principles that have traditionally been followed previously in astronomy have sort of dropped away as we've been able to interpret better data just with better technology. But it strikes me that if we were able to base healthcare and much of our social system not on a financial imperative, but rather on something more equitable. And I'm not talking socialism, I'm talking a different method of looking at it. And technology, obviously, when we talked about, has is a disruptor in this field. But if we're always going to struggle over a dollar, or what portion of whatever assets we have that we're going to put towards something, we're never going to make it.
Well, this isn't a perfect answer, and it's an interesting question. And I would say also to everyone, the one thing I've loved throughout my life, I love social movements and revolutions, so I've kind of studied them. So why has this movement never become a movement? But let me answer one question. It's very interesting. Finances, and how we pay for health care. And we love it, right? I can't tell you how many intelligent people I listen to at conferences who say, only if we weren't fee-for-service. If we weren't fee-for-service, we'd be so safe. Fee-for-service has absolutely created our patient safety problem. I'm going to tell you that is actually not true. It's a privilege, I get to go to all the countries that do not have a fee-for-service system, where nobody makes money on errors. And I want to tell you, they have errors galore. People want to say to me all the time, where can I go? Give me a country. I want to go to the country that has it right. I cannot give you a country. This problem is everywhere. And it is not tied to fee-for-service. I don't love fee-for-service. There are a lot of things wrong with fee-for-service. I'll be happy. We could talk about it. My background was economics. That is not at the core of this. So then the question is, what is wrong? With so many people, and you know, we all hear the estimates, anywhere from 250 to 400,000 people die from preventable medical error. Doesn't matter to me what the number is, not even worth arguing over. Too many people die. Why can't we get a movement going? And it is interesting because we do have one problem. Everybody for a while has their favorite solution, and are they willing to come together? But most importantly, we also need all of you clinicians. You still are the most valuable voices right now. We need you to find a way to come together. You know, we need to have a tribe of the virtuous or something. People who say we've all had it, regardless of our system, regardless of our specialty, we're entrusted with lives, and we demand that safety be everyone's priority. I don't know a better way. It's been a challenge, though, I have to say. Even, I can't believe we put the coalition together that we did for a National Patient Safety Board. I'm actually shocked at the coalition. But then you have legislature, and then you all know, because you belong to these organizations, we have big organizations out there who will give me lip service. Good idea, we probably do need it. And you know what's happening behind the scenes. They're saying to the legislators, no. And the reason they'll say it is not that Karen and the others aren't well-intentioned. They're well-intentioned, and they're promising us this isn't about regulation. They're not going to be transparent with our data. But you know what? Bad people will take it over, and they'll be out there, and we won't be able to control it. I have seen this happen over and over again. We can't get things through Congress because they're big forces of resistance, and they don't want change. Their sense is if there's any change, it could be bad change. And it's really been a problem. And also, I wish I could have an easy answer, but I think we have to get away from fee-for-service, you know, or how we finance healthcare. There are lots of things wrong with it, but it's not a simple explanation for why healthcare isn't safer.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm a 39 years in primary care family practice provider, so my angle is from the world of outpatient medicine. A lot of the comments and topics here have been, in this conference, has been regarding hospital systems and big medical record systems. A challenge, and I'm curious your thoughts on the fact that so much hands-on care now is provided by, you know, the weakest link in a system is the lowest common denominator, the least skilled, least educated person providing care, the medical assistant, the technologist dispensing medications at the assisted living facility. Often these are high school kids that they like taking care of people. They're going to do this even though they could make more money working at McDonald's, but they'd also rather be on their cell phone texting. And so safety sounds great to us in this room, but how does it trickle down in an organization to the individuals who are actually handing out the pill or meeting with the patient or giving them the instructions?
Oh, well, the one button you wish you wouldn't have pushed is skilled nursing, assisted living, personal care. Huge crisis in our country. And I say to the younger generations, they look at us, they think this is our problem. Actually, this is their problem. And I don't know how to activate them. I told you I love social movements, but I look at my poor kids and their children. You are going to be caring for us a long time. We're going to be living a long time. We're going to cost a lot of money. This is your problem. So I won't go into, we have a whole team on senior care. We do a lot of work in senior care, documentaries. We actually got our Medicaid rate raised in our state. But skilled nursing is a whole issue, and believe me, worth everyone's attention. It is a societal crisis. That's how I look at it right now. I don't know how all of our children can pay for all of us. So that's an issue, but let me look at primary care. There's more attention now being given because more care is being pushed out in the community. There are a couple of simple, I mean, these sound so simple. In England, my husband spent 2 years at Cambridge University, and his best friend was at the very top of their class. And he went into medical school, and he became a GP. And I said to him, why are you, isn't this terrible? But I said, why are you a GP? You could be anything you want. And he said to me, because if I get it wrong, nothing else works. He said, it is the most interesting area of medicine for someone who's curious, intellectually astute. But I will tell you, we had a family practice, a doctor, a medical student, come to us. They encouraged her to leave medical school. She was at the top of her class. She wanted to be a family practice doc. And they said to her, this is no joke, well, your father died, and you're emotionally very upset. Why don't you take a year off and revisit your specialty? She became a family practice doc. She couldn't be happier. But, I do think that these things matter. And the value we place and the attention we've given to safety in outpatient settings is, really sparse. And you're absolutely right. We all know this, we're replacing a lot of skilled physicians and nurses with people we think can do the job with much less training. And I will also say for our nursing school, let me just say, give them a plug. And I love our nursing school. They haven't compromised on their standards one bit. They say, we're not going to be Kentucky Fried Nursing. We're not going to be all remote. We're not giving up. If you're going to graduate from our medical school, you are going to be a top-notch nurse. You're going to have all the skills you need. And here's the sad thing the dean said to me, I'm lucky if 1/3 of these beautiful students actually stick in a healthcare setting. So I don't know. I wish I could solve all these problems. You're absolutely right. But there is a lot of attention now to outpatient safety. That is the good news.
My wife is a human factors engineer, and a tenet that she shares with me often that you shared here is it's the system, don't blame the user, which I think a lot of people in this room would say that goes against our typical culture within the medical field. On that same line, we've heard a lot of awesome, large-scale call to actions, but can you provide some, perhaps, practical things we can take home to our small societies, with our clinics, our wards, our physician groups, where we can work on adjusting that culture and promoting that safety, even within our big organizations that we're a part of?
Well, you can tell your wife I said this. Every C-suite should have a human factors engineer. It is shocking to me that we don't. So that's one place to start. Or encourage them in your specialty societies. It is so eye-opening when the human factors engineers look at the world that is customary to you, that you've become, you've accommodated. That's the environment in which you work. And maybe you go crazy if you're asking all these questions all the time, or your eyes were seeing all the ways that were somewhat dysfunctional, you would be miserable. But it is worth having a human factors engineer because they're not committed. It's not their taken for granted world. And they come in with fresh eyes. And you can't believe the things they point out. And I'll just give one quick, it had to do with the last question about primary care. At Grantmakers in Health, I organized a session once. I wasn't sure anybody would come. And we showed a picture of a very good doctor. She's a wonderful primary care doctor in one of our federally qualified health centers. And she was just interviewing a patient who gave her permission with diabetes. And so we had this sort of cool video, and I showed it to a bunch of grant makers, many of them, frankly, with no healthcare background. And it was a very good doctor and an encounter. And I said to them, how could this be improved? So we're going to take 15 minutes, talk at your table, and then they had so many ways in which the encounter could be improved. And it was extraordinary bringing other eyes. As a wonderful doctor. And she let us she let herself be filmed. But what I'm saying, in a way, for all the people interested in human factors engineers, we need those new set of eyes.
Hi, I just want to change the subject a little bit. My wife's an attorney, and we talk about malpractice and things like that periodically. And so I want your opinion on how malpractice liability might actually stifle transparency and in reporting, transparency, and how that might actually have a negative effect on patient care and actually might be more harmful than good, or how that might relate in that regard. I was reading an article from the American Bar Association from 2 years ago, and their topic was, does malpractice liability promote patient safety? And they couldn't conclude that it did. So if it doesn't promote it, does it actually make it more difficult for institutions, for medical practitioners to be transparent, open, figuring out, hey, this was a near miss, this was a miss, and reporting it and comparing? So just your thoughts on that.
Well, there's been a fair amount of research on this, and so, it's very murky. People don't think of our malpractice system as doing a lot of good. How much harm it does is another interesting issue. As I said, my son-in-law is an OB-GYN, so he deals with this all the time. But let me say that overall, just like fee-for-service, it's not the real problem. But let me also tell you, it's worth visiting Norway's system. Norway, other countries look at us like we're crazy. In Norway, there's a panel, and if someone is shown to be the victim of an adverse event, there is a formula. It's a formula. Their age, how many years of active employment are lost, what caregiving they'll need, what special assistance and equipment they'll need. And it's a formula. And they pay it. And they go on. The next person, whatever, they review this thing. And it's paid by formula. You can, if you want, take it to court. If you don't like the formula and what the formula, almost nobody does. There's almost no legal, there are no law firms will get money for you. That's one of our law firms. There aren't lawyers, who specialize in this. It's very interesting. They just do it by the numbers. What harm, did you suffer harm that could have been prevented? And if you did, what is the cost to you and your family? And they give them a dollar amount and they move on. Well, as you know, it saves a lot of money. It's also not random. Like, you have no idea if you go to court, if you'll get anything, or if it'll cost you. The whole thing is insane, but they look at our system and they laugh. It's not a good system. On the other hand, if you ask me what are my priorities, I only have so much energy and time in a day and only so many staff, what would my priorities be to make the big difference? It's low on my list. Not that I'm discounting it, but I don't think if you get to the core of it, it's a great, employment for a lot of people. And it's sort of what we have that families feel, well, I'm a little protected because my doctor and my hospital are afraid. I'll tell you, the leaders of one of our largest systems said to me, I could care less. Which he did, I've hired the best litigators. I have my own litigators. I don't care how often they go to court. It's not a top priority for me. I'm not saying that we couldn't do better. And I love the Norwegian system. It just seems so fair. But I also think if you're putting your energy somewhere, and first of all, never, never will you get legislation. I'm a realist, right? Like, I could spend time banging my head on a wall, or I could try to do something useful. If you think we're going to get any legislation that does away with this whole sector of the legal practice, I would say I'm not feeling hopeful. But it's the reforms that are there are obvious. It's just that I don't think politically, I don't think you can do it. These questions were excellent. I love a give and take. Thank you so much. I love being back in Utah, which is about as beautiful as any place in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Feinstein.